Peasants! In this video, I will infuse that lump that sits 3 feet above your with an ingenious method to build your colors up in an alla prima portrait. And as an example, I will use this 5-hour master copy of John Singer Sargent's portrait of John Ridgeley Carter I live streamed on Twitch. My goal is to not only prove my dominance over a painter like Sargent, but to also grow your brand so that you too may become a badass and sexy painter like me. Trust me when I tell you that your own mama won't recognize you after this video. I'm working with a limited palette, highly intellectual, which means I'm only using ivory black, cadmium red, yellow ochre, and cremnitz white. This is a great way to fully learn how to mix these colors, and it works great for flesh tones. Don't worry if you have a hard time keeping up with the mixtures here, because once I'm done, a still image of the finished mixtures will appear, and I will have written out the rough ratio of colors in each pile of paint, and you can screenshot it as a reference. I also did a video on mixing flesh tones where I go into more detail, which I'm linking above. When you are a fledgling painter, it is confusing to know how much focus you should give to matching the correct colors when you first start a work. I want to make it simple for you bump munches. Think of building the color up as you think of building the drawing up. Start off simple and very basic. As the work progresses, then you can get more specific and detailed. Color is the same. Don't spend all day trying to match specific colors at first, because if the drawing is incorrect, you will have to paint over those colors. You hear people say to not focus on color at first, but rather get the drawing and light values correct, which is confusing because how can you develop a colorful work without color? People like myself, massive quadriceps, who have been painting for a while, when we block the painting in, we give it a basic color, and it is not as hard for us to get that basic color because we are used to mixing colors. But if you are first starting, it can be incredibly difficult to get a basic color, and you have to think about it more. When we say do not focus on the color at first, what we mean is don't spend all day trying to mix the very individual and subtle colors you see, idiot. But if you're not used to mixing colors, you will have to think harder about getting the very broad colors. But I have a solution for you, which is this mixing process you see here, professionalism. Instead of mixing all the colors from scratch like a moron with a brush every time you go into paint, mix 5 to 6 basic piles of colors for the flesh tones like this. Just take your time in the beginning before you start painting to observe the very basic colors and mix them from dark to light. Spend time preparing your palette. This will save you a lot of time from having to constantly mix during the painting process, and it will free your mind up to focus on the drawing and the light impression, which is more important right now. Simply mix between the piles of paint to get the correct light value, and then if you want, you can tint that value with some color from above as the painting progresses. Painting is a juggling act, and an advanced painter like Louis Cadetti can keep several things in his or her mind all at once while acting upon them. But when you first start, you need to master several things, and you will need to think more about each one individually while trying to do them all at once. For the beginner, I recommend this method of mixing colors because it allows you to focus more on getting the drawing and light impression in the beginning without having to worry so much about the color. Once the drawing and the technique is solidified, then you can spend more time trying to figure out the exact colors. But with this method, you will have gotten them in the ballpark. I start by only focusing on the drawing and correcting the large shape using a simple mixture of ivory black and cadmium red. I am constantly squinting down, and even though I am working off of a reference photo to the left of the painting, I am standing and walking back and forth while I paint. Doing so enables me to view the painting from a slight distance to make sure the drawing and the light impression are correct. Tactical genius. At this stage, I am only focusing on the basic shapes. However, I am also observing colors and light values, and I'm thinking about the best way to build the painting up once I start adding color. I developed this painting in the method beginners should use to develop their work to properly learn how to paint. Once you have more experience, you can start each painting in whatever way you wish. Some artists throw vibrant colors down and then grade them out as they go. Others match the colors more specifically from the start, while others might not add them until the end. It is important to keep in mind that these artists have the experience of mixing colors and they already know the developmental process. If you are a beginner, the process I'm showing you is ideal for learning. Once the very basic drawing is correct, I continue correcting the shapes, but with very basic colors. I place straight white and black on the side so I know how light or dark the paint is that I am placing down. As I apply color, I'm not worrying about how red, yellow, or blue something is at this stage. I am mainly concerned about getting the drawing and light impression correct. It is okay if our transitions look grayed out because we will enhance them with more vibrant colors later once the drawing is solidified. Just don't be a butthole and paint too thickly at first, but rather try to use paint without medium and paint it on just thick enough to cover the canvas, or in this case, the birchwood panel. Like I said, and this bears repeating, think of color like you think of developing the drawing. In drawing, you start off simple with basic shapes, and once you have a solid foundation, you become more subtle and specific by breaking those basic shapes down into smaller shapes. So too with color, get the very broad basic colors for the block in, and once the drawing is solid, you can spend more mental energy focusing on the color. As the drawing becomes more accurate, I start paying a bit more attention to specific colors, but the main thing I am focusing on is getting the drawing and light impression. If you're a beginner, it is okay to start spending a bit more time on building up the colors at this stage, but your main concern should remain the same as before. Correct the drawing and key up your light values. If those are correct, you'll be able to hone in on the colors more easily. I am working all around the painting, and thus far, I have hardly used any medium, which in this case is walnut oil. For an alla prima painting, paint that is thinned out by medium is best used at the end because it can sit on top of a thicker paint that doesn't have any medium in it. If you paint with thinned out paint first, it makes it harder to build the paint up and it can become muddy like your face. I remember when I first started painting that I felt like I couldn't retain everything I had to do in my mind. I had to focus so much on learning to see and mix my colors, learning how to organize my palette, learning how to organize my brushes, all while struggling to work with a very awkward medium that I wasn't used to. All the while fighting off the constant flow of hot women that were trying to go out with me because they liked my ass. I had been trained to draw so I could see what was wrong, but I had no idea how to physically fix it with paint, and I hadn't yet learned the developmental process. If you're a beginner and feel overwhelmed and perhaps insufficient, just know that these videos that you watch are done by people who went through what you are going through now. You aren't seeing their mistakes, and any mistakes that are being made for the most part are edited out. I live stream so you can see me make mistakes and you can better understand what it takes to not only make a painting, but how to not let discouragement destroy you. The face is starting to shape up at this point because I had a solid foundation to build upon. That foundation is enabling me to detail and enhance my colors. This is a very fun part of the painting process. It took me 5 hours from start to finish, and I did not take a break, Massive Packs, because I was streaming. However, I do not recommend painting this long without a break. Take at least a few minutes every 25 minutes or so to rest your eyes, and I can assure you that you will be able to see the mistakes you made more clearly when you continue. John Singer Sargent, total amateur, had a very brushy technique, but he would spend time in the initial phase correcting and refining his drawing. Once it was correct, he could then paint solid brushwork over it, which made it look loose and painterly. If you take your time and paint slowly, you will make less mistakes, which actually speeds up your work. This is key when doing alla prima. Don't rush. Those flowy and loose brushstrokes were not always painted on so quickly. Learn to slow yourself down and try to think about what you're doing and see 3 steps ahead, and I guarantee you that your painting will improve significantly. Spend time organizing your palette before you paint and continuously modify it and return to it throughout the course of your painting. Doing so will enable you to better focus on learning the painting process. Above all, have patience with yourself in the long term. This does take time to learn, but fear not, young one. I will assist you. Once again, I, Louis Cadetti, have expanded to the old masters and proven my intellectual superiority even over them, in this case manifested as John Singer Sargent. Let this be a lesson to all you morons out there that... Oh!